Okay, let's talk about Far Cry 7. Exclusive from Insider Gaming. Far Cry 7 story details outlined. Now, I want to be upfront and clear with all of this because some people obviously will be like, I don't want to hear spoilers. That's totally fine. This is leaks. These things are subject to change. And one thing that has been rumored for a while is that Ubisoft actually goes in and occasionally leaks this stuff intentionally to see reactions, and then if reactions are negative they might pivot and change some stuff, so you just never really know. You never know. Like, we're gonna talk about it because they don't really talk about like specific storyline stuff. I mean, vaguely they do. They talk about mechanics, they talk about the overall plot, but pretty much everything they mention would be seen on the back of the box when you buy the game. So I just want to be clear that like this isn't going to ruin your time with the game, I don't think. Insider Gaming has learned new details on Ubisoft's next mainline Far Cry entry following our exclusive report in January. The next game, which we'll refer to as Far Cry 7, is internally known as Project Blackbird. It's scheduled to be released in fall of 2025. So they're taking a good long while with this one. The game will be developed by Ubisoft Montreal and will move away from the Dunia engine into Snowdrop. Also, major shift. Maybe that means that we see a really big change in that kind of Ubisoft face that we all know and love, where all of the characters and NPCs in all of these games kind of look like siblings. It's gonna be a whole thing. An alleged leak of Far Cry 7 surfaced earlier this year, suggesting the game will be dubbed, quote, Far Cry Rise, trying to get away from the numbered titles, which is something that also Ubisoft has done with Assassin's Creed, going away from like, you know, Assassin's Creed 1, 2, 3, 4, Black Flag. Once they hit Unity, they just said, okay, we're going to start using names instead, which is typically a good move. I think it makes it more approachable to broader audiences. It's one of the reasons I think Final Fantasy 16, it's a little intimidating to new players who have never played a Final Fantasy game before to see a 16 next to the game, because they're like, oh my god, do I have to play the other 15 to grasp this? You know, it's just an unnecessary headache when you can just name it something else. So I would totally believe that they would go with a new naming convention. It will take place on a fictitious tropical island called Kimsan, which can be found in the Yellow Sea next to Korea. According to the leaker, Insider Gaming was told by its sources that this leak is entirely inaccurate, so we won't be diving into more pieces of information from this rumor. So, ignore all of that. Ignore all of that. I still would not be surprised if they change the name and they go away from 7, but as for all of this other stuff, they're saying that it's not accurate. Speaking with sources, it's understood that the next entry to the series will be a non-linear story. Interesting. With the story being centered around rescuing the player's kidnapped family. It was said that the game's plot revolves around a wealthy family that has been kidnapped by a conspiracy group called the Sons of Truth. Oh. While exact, finite details are subject to change due to the game's stage of development. It was said that the premise of the campaign is for the player to rescue their entire family within a specific time frame. Currently, so at this stage of development, the current in-game timer stands at 72 hours or 24 hours in real time, but the timer can be paused when the player enters one of their safe houses, it was said. Interesting. What this immediately made me think of was Dead Rising. You guys remember those old games? Dead Rising is like an old school zombie game that I think is good fun. If you don't remember Dead Rising, like this old game, does this ring a bell? Now this operated under a very similar mechanic where you had an actual in-game timer that you had to stick to. And if you did not complete the story within that timeline, time until helicopter arrival, you had 59 hours, 59 minutes in the game, which I think it wasn't that long. It was like 10 hours or 11 hours or 12 hours or something. It wasn't a crazy amount of time, but in real world time, it was like, again, 10, 11 hours. But you would go through, complete the story during that time, and it worked pretty well to keep some hustle. It kind of was a constant point of stress and concern because you had to keep up on it and you had to really be focusing on what you were doing, or you could just totally ignore it and just be like, it's whatever, and just dick around and have fun. and that's totally fine. And they encourage you, like if you got one of the main story characters killed, they're like, oh, oops, story failed. Now you just get to screw around in this zombie apocalypse in this mall and do whatever you want. And they just let you do whatever you wanted. And it was actually pretty cool. So I'm not opposed to like timers in games. I think they can give you hustle, and I think when done properly, they can actually create some really unique gameplay interactions. So I think this is one of those things that immediately sounds like, oh, what? But I actually think that this could be interesting. And it's such a departure from what they've done elsewhere. I'm interested. I'm intrigued, shall we say. So I'm not opposed to this. I saw some people commenting on like X that people were like, oh no, it's just going to be a crappy timer and then they're going to sell you an extension for $5 or something. And let me be clear, if they do that and they sell you like an extra 5 hours in game for $5 or something, that will actually be ridiculously stupid. Like that is freaking dumb. And we will tease them together proudly for that. But unique gameplay mechanics and ideas, I'm interested. Oh, don't do that, Luke. Don't call it X, call it Twitter. Don't give in. Sorry, it just slipped off my tongue. I'm so sorry. So sorry. Let's see. Far Cry 7's non-linear story means that family members do not need to be rescued in order, and some family members can be killed, which has an impact on the story. While details are still a little murky, it's understood that the goal is to take down the Sons of Truth, and in order to complete the game 100%, you'll need to rescue all of your family members safely. To find your family members, it was said that Far Cry 7 introduces a new interrogation mechanic to the game, which doesn't necessarily mean you'll get the information you need from the enemy. Sometimes the enemy will give up the information, sometimes they'll lie, stay quiet, or even sometimes escape, it was said. Ubisoft has been sporadic on their game announcements as of late, with the likes of The Division 3 being randomly announced in a PR email, so it's unclear when official information will be released, but we'll make sure to let you know once we know more. It's a departure for sure. What I find so funny about like people on X or Twitter like losing their minds about all this is like, what has everybody been begging for years from Ubisoft? Something different than just reskins of games they released a decade ago. And this is a step towards that, and people still lose their minds and are like, no, don't do that. Make Far Cry 7 and make it normal. You know, like innovation requires risk. And honestly, like if Ubisoft wants to risk it and do something a little weird and different, like putting timers on it to save your family within a set period of in-game time, I'm willing to try it. I'm open to it. I'm not going to like dismiss it just because it's different, you know? I'm willing to embrace it. Far Cry 6 was amazing. For me, I think if I remember correctly, I gave Far Cry 6 an 8 when I was trying to do numbered scores. And I did that because one, Giancarlo Esposito is phenomenal. And two, I think mechanistically the game was bigger and more varied than it had ever been before. It still certainly was fatigued from the previous games. I don't think the story was as compelling or captivating as other releases, but I had a good time with it. I was glad I played it. It was good. Wasn't great, wasn't amazing, wasn't a masterpiece, but it was good. And I think I would stand by that. I think it was mechanistically the best the franchise had ever been, but it was extremely fatigued, and people are just like kind of done with that same formula. At least if they're done with it, they're still buying it and it still sells millions of copies, of course, but they would like something fresh and different. I'm tired of the bright colors, lights of every Ubisoft game. They need to go dark, Pioneer, Stalker dark. I do think, well, I do agree that like the constant purple crystals and bright pink colors and stuff, I'm just kind of sick of that. So I agree they could benefit from shaking it up. Samaya, thank you for the super chat as well. Non-linear story and RPG elements make more sense for Far Cry than Assassin's Creed, I think. Yeah, I think so. I think Assassin's Creed benefits from big set pieces, from crazy city recreations and stuff. And I think their obsession with trying to make basically The Witcher 3 Assassin's Creed edition is just, it's not going to work with that. So I would agree. I think Far Cry fits it nicely. Interesting leaks. Again, like it's easy for us to poke fun and maybe tease them about it for doing like timer stuff. I'm willing to try it. I'm open to it. And if it's something different and really wacky, it might end up being one of my favorite things they've ever done. It might also fail utterly terribly. But what we do know is that they're giving this team a lot of time to work on it. And that's one of the most bare bones basic elements required to make a really good game, is to give the devs time to do it. So we shall see.